Welcome to your deep dive. Today we'll be looking at the book of Genesis, but not in the way you might expect.
Yeah, no Sunday school here.
We're going to be looking at it through the lens of modern-day office politics.
Exactly. We're going to be taking these ancient stories of Cain and Abel, Noah, Abraham, and Jacob, and seeing what timeless lessons we can learn from them for navigating our modern workplaces.
Think of it as like ancient wisdom for the modern office. So get ready to unearth some surprising insights into sibling rivalry, negotiation tactics, leadership dilemmas, and even how to deal with that coworker that really gets under your skin.
Yeah, you might be surprised how much these stories from thousands of years ago still resonate with the challenges
Yeah.
and the triumphs, what we face in our careers today.
So let's dive right in and start with Cain and Abel. Genesis 4 sets the scene. Two brothers, different jobs, offering up their work to God. Abel, the shepherd, gets the thumbs up. Cain, the farmer, not so much. Cain's resentment. It's almost palpable. It's like you can almost hear him thinking, why is Abel getting all the praise when I'm putting in just as much effort?
It really taps into that universal feeling of being overlooked, of seeing someone else rewarded for work that you feel is just as valuable, if not more so.
Absolutely. It's like when you spend hours slaving over presentation, and then your colleague gets all the credit just because they're better at schmoozing the boss. I mean, come on. Has that ever happened to you in your own career?
Oh, yeah. I think most of us have experienced that feeling at some point. And it's interesting that God doesn't just dismiss Cain's anger. He actually challenges Cain to, master it.
Yeah.
There's this inherent expectation of managing your emotions, even when you're dealing with some kind of perceived injustice.
Like some ancient workplace ethics training.
Exactly.
So how do we master that frustration and turn it into something, constructive? What can we learn from
Yeah.
Cain's experience?
Well, I don't think it's about suppressing our feelings. It's more about acknowledging them, understanding where they're coming from, and then choosing how we respond.
Right.
So in a work setting, this might look like, having a calm and honest conversation with your manager about feeling undervalued, rather than just letting that resentment fester and potentially sabotage your work.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
about taking ownership of your emotions and finding a productive way to address the situation.
Exactly.
All right. So we've talked about managing our own emotions, but what about the dangers of other people's actions, even in their personal lives? Our next story is about Noah and his son, Ham. And we all know the flood story, right? But Genesis 9 kind of takes a turn when Noah, well, let's just say he's enjoying his retirement a bit too much.
Yeah, this is where things get really interesting because it raises these questions about the boundaries between our personal and professional lives, something that's even more blurred today than it was back then.
Absolutely. So Noah lets his guard down, perhaps overindulges a little, and Ham stumbles upon him in kind of a vulnerable state. And what's so fascinating here is that we don't actually know Ham's intentions. Was he trying to be malicious, or was he just gossiping?
Right.
And yet the consequences are really severe. I mean, Noah curses Ham's son, Canaan, and the repercussions kind of echo down through the
It
generations.
really makes you think, right?
Noah's story really makes you think, doesn't it? Especially in today's world, where the lines between our personal and professional lives are so blurred. Social media, after-work events, I mean, it's a minefield.
It really is. And this story kind of serves as a cautionary tale about the importance of being mindful of our actions,
Yeah.
even in, seemingly private settings.
Where do you think we should draw the line?
Mm-hmm.
How can we protect ourselves from those unexpected consequences of letting our guard down, even in seemingly private settings?
That's a question that each individual has to grapple with. But Noah's story really highlights the fact that our actions, even in our personal lives, can have professional repercussions. So it's a good reminder to just be mindful of how we present ourselves to the world, both online and offline.
Yeah, it's all about managing your own reputation and just being aware of how easily things can be misinterpreted or taken out of context,
Yeah.
especially in today's hyper-connected world.
It's like that old saying, loose lips sink ships, but now it's like loose tweets can sink careers.
Exactly. But let's move on to a figure who demonstrates a different set of skills entirely. Abraham. He's often portrayed as this model of faith, but he's also a master negotiator. And his story has some really powerful lessons for anyone who works in, a collaborative environment.
This is where things get really interesting. For those of us who have to negotiate deadlines, resources, or even just who gets to control the office temperature.
Right.
Come on. So we see Abraham's negotiation prowess in two key stories. His refusal of the king of Sodom's offer after he rescues Lot, and then his plea to God to spare Sodom. He's bargaining down the number of righteous people required to save the city.
So in the first story, he's fresh off this military victory. He could have taken a huge reward. And yet he just says, nope, I won't take anything that could even suggest I acted for personal gain.
Talk about integrity.
Right.
And then with God, he's essentially haggling, trying to save Sodom by negotiating a lower quota of good people. I mean, it's remarkable.
It really is. What strikes me is that Abraham negotiates consistently, but he always does it from a place of principle.
Yeah.
You know, he builds trust by demonstrating that his motives are aligned with a greater good, even he doesn't hold the most power in that situation.
He's not about winning at all costs. It's about finding those mutually acceptable solutions. And that approach can be incredibly effective in the workplace.
So how can we channel our inner Abraham when, let's say, we're going up against a tough boss who's notorious for, never budging? What can we do?
Well, one key takeaway from Abraham's story is the importance of preparation. He clearly knows what he wants and what he's willing to concede. So going into any negotiation with a clear understanding of your goals and your non-negotiables, I think that's crucial.
So it's like having that clear game plan and then sticking to it.
Exactly. Another thing Abraham demonstrates is the power of framing. He's not just demanding things, he's appealing to a higher purpose, whether it's fairness or, the greater good.
So instead of just saying, like, I need a raise, you frame it as, I am really committed to this company's success, and I believe that a raise reflecting my contributions would really enable me to be even more effective.
That's a much more compelling argument, By framing your request in terms of, shared goals and values, you're much more likely to find that common ground and reach a solution that works for everyone.
It's about finding those win-win scenarios.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've seen how to manage our emotions, how to protect our reputation, how to negotiate like a pro. But what about ambition? Where does that fit in? And how do we make sure that it doesn't lead us down a less than ethical path?
I think it's time to talk about Jacob.
Jacob. Yeah. He is a complex character. Ambitious, resourceful, but not always playing by the rules. He's a striver, that's for sure. He obtains the birthright, albeit through somewhat questionable means, works diligently for Laban, but also displays, some cunning, and even wrestles with God, demonstrating both persistence and vulnerability.
He tricked his own father, worked for a less than honest relative. And wrestled with a divine being. This sounds more like an action movie than a career guide.
Right. But here's the thing, and I'm not condoning his deception at all, but Jacob achieves both worldly success and undergoes this really profound spiritual transformation. And it kind of speaks to the reality that a lot of successful people, both historically and in our own lives, have a shadow side. It's like that coworker who seems to, just effortlessly climb the corporate ladder. But then you hear these whispers about how they got there. It makes you wonder, right?
It really does, and I think it forces us to kind of confront that tension between ambition and integrity, because in today's workplace, drive and this relentless pursuit of goals, that's often rewarded.
So how do we reconcile those two sides? How do we make sure that our ambition doesn't lead us down a slippery slope?
That's the million-dollar question, and I think Jacob's story just reminds us that even with ambition, we have to define our boundaries.
What are some practical tips for those of us who really want to get ahead, but without compromising our ethics?
Well, first, be self-aware. Recognize your own ambition and its potential pitfalls. Ask yourself, what am I willing to do? And more importantly, what am I not willing to do to get ahead?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's about setting those ethical boundaries for yourself. What else?
Find mentors and colleagues who align with your values. Surround yourself with people who will hold you accountable and challenge you when you're straying from your principles.
It's like having an ethical sounding board.
Exactly. And just remember that success achieved through unethical means is ultimately hollow. True success comes from finding that balance between ambition and integrity.
It really is amazing, isn't it, how these stories from Genesis, they were written thousands of years ago, but they still have so much relevance for us, today.
They do. It's fascinating. And what's really interesting is that they aren't just these abstract lessons. We can actually see them play out in our everyday lives, especially, in the workplace.
Yeah. It's like we're holding up a mirror to our own experiences, right?
Yeah.
Think about it. Cain and Abel, it could be any two coworkers who are both trying to get that same promotion. Each one convinced that they deserve it more.
Exactly. And haven't we all met a ham in the office at some point? You know, that person who's always gossiping or sharing a little too much information. And potentially, damaging someone's reputation.
It's a good reminder that, we're all part of this complex web of relationships, and our actions can have those ripple effects that we might not even be thinking about.
Absolutely. And then there's Abraham. He's the ultimate role model for principled negotiation. We can all learn a lot from his ability to stand firm in his values, but still find ways to reach agreements that benefit everyone.
Yeah, it's about being strategic. It's about knowing your worth
Mm,
and framing your arguments in a way that resonates with the other person.
exactly. And finally, there's Jacob. He's a reminder that, ambition, it's a powerful driving force, but it really needs to be balanced out with integrity. It's about finding that sweet spot where we can pursue our goals without, compromising what we believe in.
It's a cautionary tale, for
Yeah.
sure. But it's also an inspiring one because in the end, he does find redemption and he becomes this symbol of transformation.
That's a powerful message for all of us. It's never too late to change course,
Yeah.
to realign ourselves with our values, and to find success that is both meaningful and ethical.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Genesis, I hope that you've gained some valuable insights, things that you can apply to your own career journey. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that these stories are so much more than just ancient history. They offer this timeless wisdom that can help us navigate all the complexities of our modern workplaces, with more awareness, skill, and most importantly, integrity.
And who knows, maybe by reflecting on these stories and applying what we've learned, we could even create a more ethical and fulfilling work environment, you know, for ourselves and for the people around us. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.